This is the intro podcast to exceeded light sensor. The exceeded light sensor is used in many cases where machinery, electronics, or some other device is limited to the amount of light that can be exposed. When this is triggered through the sensor we're going to use this week, it will notify through multiple different types of notifications. We'll be using for this project IFTTT recipe that will call your phone when the light sensor is triggered. The official name of the light sensor is photo sensor. The three parts used for the project are particle photon, photosensor, and resistor. I'm going to jump right into the code portion, which I do not go over in detail in the project podcast, but I will here in the intro a little bit. The way the code works for this project is it first initializes the D7, which is the LED light. Then it initializes the photoresistor on A0, the power on A5, initialize the value for integer value analog for the value of the photoresistor when it's red. Has two basic functions that's needed in a particle app: setup and loop. In the setup, the first three lines binds the pins to the place on the board. The first pin is the LED output that lights up the LED, photoresistor input, and power output. Then digital write power high is going to tell the photon that it needs full power from A5. And then finally, it's going to do a preprocessor directive that's going to bind the variable analog value into particle. In the loop, it's going to first of all check to see the value of the photoresistor as it is now. And then an if statement that if that value is greater than or equal to 1700, you need to play with this number. And I'll go over more detail in the podcast of that, but you will need to play with that number. One of the things I recommend to do, which I'll talk about in a second, is maybe changing this code a little bit when you're first testing it. But let's go over all of it first before I do that. So if an analog value is greater than or equal to 1700, say that's true, it's going to delay 100 seconds, do a particle push publish of the light sensor value, turn on the D7 light with a digital write, particle push exceed light. This is a line that IFTTT is going to use. Delay 5 seconds, turn the light off, delay 10 seconds. So let's talk about the changes I talked about earlier that I recommend that might help from getting 10 calls the first time you test it. What I suggest to do is comment out this line here, which IFTT uses. So if we comment that out, and a comment looks like this here, the 2 forward slashes. Put the 2 forward slashes there, save it. Also, you can move the particle.publish light line above the if statement when you're first testing to see what the value of the light in the room currently is. You can move it back into the if statement after you've determined what that value is. So let's say you put it outside the if statement, you start up you flash the photon with the code, you comment out this line, and let's say the number is 500, where you're currently sitting in your room or whatever. So you put your phone light on top of that photosensor, and you determine it is 1500 with your light from your phone. So what you do is change this analog greater than or equal to 1500. because you've tested a few times and you put the light over it and it's always 1500 every time. Once you figure that out, then what you can do is move this line that's outside the if statement during the initial test back into the if statement, uncomment out this line, the particle publish.exceed light, and then when it is triggered and you see the light come on, immediately turn the light on your phone or whatever other light source you have off. Going on down, once you put your code in, you're going to save it, flash it, test it like I talked about earlier. And then when it is triggered, the light on your phone or any other light source triggers it. You will get a call. D7 will light up first on the LED, then you're going to call from IFTTT. Other recipes that are also I put in here that you can play with is sending an email, Google Sheets, and Facebook Messenger. The first part of the recipe will be the same as it is for the recipe here on step 3. The only change is going to be not on the if, because that's the first part. Then is what's going to change. We're using then call my phone. You can then play with, okay, then send an email, then create a row in a Google Sheet, and then send a Facebook Messenger post. So that concludes Project 2 Exceeded Light Sensor Introduction. Enjoy.